who say they might not even attend. We'll discuss these latest developments and more of today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manouse. We'll also discuss the changing outlook for clean energy in our state with freelance journalist Laura Mallonee, who reported on the topic for the Texas Observer. Plus, the Texas Forensic Nurse Examiners, the Forensic Center of Excellence, shares with us an upcoming concert event aimed at supporting survivors of sexual assault. And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration is dispatching a delegation back to Pakistan's capital soon for a second round of U.S. peace talks with Iran, according to a U.S. official not authorized to speak publicly on the matter. However, the White House has not officially said if Vice President J.D. Vance will also be traveling to Islamabad. A resolution hinges in part on ending a standoff in the Strait of Hormuz, an important route for global oil supplies. NPR's Tamara Keith has more.
The president needs the Strait of Hormuz reopened to stabilize oil markets, but it's a key piece of leverage Iran has gained in this war. Trump also set a red line at Iran's nuclear program. He doesn't want Iran enriching uranium, and he wants to take possession of the material Iran still has. But also, Trump is just looking for a way to declare a win and get out of this war. He's been claiming it was nearly over for weeks now. But reality is a stubborn thing, and Iran gets a say in whether this conflict ends or not.
NPR's Tamara Keith reporting. A new United Nations report says billions of dollars are needed to rebuild Gaza, including its university buildings destroyed by the Israeli military. Palestinian students with scholarships to study abroad rallied in Gaza today, calling on Israel to allow them to cross Gaza's border with Egypt. Here's NPR's Anas Baba in Gaza.
A Palestinian song plays as hundreds of students rally in Gaza City. They are raising their passports and college acceptance letters above their heads, demanding Israel allow them to leave Gaza. Rima's Cake, who's 22, says she has been trying to leave Gaza for 2.5 years after being accepted to 4 universities abroad, including in Canada.
We are students, we are top students, and we are maybe teachers, doctors, engineers, researchers. We just want to continue our dreams, and we want to reach our universities to rebuild Gaza.
6 months into the ceasefire, only small numbers of hospital patients and their companions have been allowed to leave Gaza. Anas Baba, NPR News, Gaza City.
A magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck off Japan's northern coast this morning. NPR's Anthony Kuhn has an update.
The quake was felt and buildings swayed in the capital, Tokyo. Residents of some coastal areas in the country's northeast were ordered to evacuate to high ground. Authorities warned of waves up to 10 feet high, but the first to reach shore were about 2.5 feet or less. Some train services were suspended. Nuclear power plants were checked, but no abnormalities were found. The quake struck the same region where a magnitude 9 earthquake and tsunami killed around 20,000 people and caused meltdowns at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in 2011. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Houston-born rapper David is expected to be charged in the murder of a 14-year-old girl, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was found dismembered in the trunk of his abandoned car while it was sitting in a Los Angeles police impound lot last fall. A live press conference with the Los Angeles County District Attorney and the LA Police Chief will take place at noon Central Time. David has been in custody since last Thursday. During a heated exchange at Commissioner's Court, Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo said that she had lost confidence in the leadership of the Harris County Flood Control District's ability to address delayed flood bond projects. News 88.7's Sarah Grunow reports.
Hidalgo grilled Executive Director Tina Peterson over the status of 28 flood mitigation projects that were delayed after revelations of a $410 million funding shortfall last year. Hidalgo said her office requested data to show the status of the projects and how they plan to stay on track. But the document shared with Commissioner's Court, she said, did not answer those questions.
And I don't know, Director. I think unless I'm missing something, I think I just lost my confidence in you. I don't understand what this is about.
The exchange happened when Peterson acknowledged concerns about delays with the flood projects, which were established through a $2.5 billion flood bond approved by voters in 2018 after Hurricane Harvey. I'm Sarah Grunow, News 88.7.
In sports, the University of Houston star freshman guard Kingston Flemings has declared for the NBA draft. Flemings has been identified by scouts as a talent worthy of being taken high in the first round of the draft. Your check of weather, partly sunny and breezy today with a high near 70. Tonight, mostly cloudy with rain expected, a low around 62. Right now, mostly cloudy, 68 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse and Celeste Diaz-Sherman. Well, Celeste may sound a little hoarse today.
Hoarse, that's the word.
Is that the word for it? Michael Adkison is sitting in. Celeste has the day off. Hello there, Michael.
Hey, Ernie, how are you?
I am good. You know, a lot of folks know you now primarily as our space reporter on the show. Mm-hmm. But tell them what you do here at the station.
Ooh, a little bit of everything. Right now, I'm Celeste.
So you do a little bit of everything.
I do a little bit of everything. No, really, I do whatever anyone tosses to me. We do a morning meeting every morning and say, here are the big stories for the day. And I'm kind of one of the people that covers whatever is interesting. So there was a week right before the Artemis mission where I did a Chuck Norris obituary. I did a Houston rodeo story about cowboy churches. And then I did an Artemis story. And so it was kind of just like a little bit of everything. And I feel like that's it's the most exhausting, but it's the most fun way to do news, I feel like.
On the flip side of that, though, the nice thing is when you do a story like Artemis, now you kind of own it in the newsroom.
Right.
So you're there, you are down for the press conferences, you were our conduit into space, and you were given enough. And I kind of talk this a little bit almost like a campaign membership pitch, even though we're done with membership. We reached our goal. Thank you very much. But that's one thing that it allows you to do is to really invest in a story and help give us nuance of it throughout the whole run of it.
Right. I feel like I'm giving a little bit of like behind the scenes, inside the actor studio for journalists. We talk a lot about owning the story. That's the lingo that a lot of newsrooms use, which is this idea that we could make this a passing thing or we could own the story. We could make this ours. And I feel like we really leaned into that with the Artemis mission, that it was like, okay, we could just talk about the major updates. Oh, they launched. Oh, they did this. But we as a newsroom talked about, let's own this story. And so we did stories about Johnson Space Center and the flight directors. We are working on a story that's about, the next generation, the Artemis generation, people who are studying space right now. That's in the works right now. So we like to own the story, like I said, and kind of just really embrace it.
Well, one thing that I really liked about it was that you folks did do a live, we love our YouTubers, and as we call them, our HuTubers who are watching right now. If you're not in that group, make sure you go to YouTube and join us just start chatting in there. We have a great group of folks who join us almost every single day to do it.
Wow.
But you folks did a YouTube simulcast of the launch that went to almost, if not now, has surpassed 100,000 views.
Yeah, it was
crazy. And big numbers for us here.
Mm-hmm. No, we decided to cover the launch with a live broadcast. So we were on the air later than we normally go on Houston Public Media. I think it was right around 7 o'clock. No, 5 o'clock. It was 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit late, not so late. So we caught a lot of the rush hour traffic. And we also simulcasted on YouTube, as you said. And I think that we provided an outlet that was not readily available for a lot of people, in the sense that, yeah, we covered the launch. Everyone was covering the launch. It was such a moment. But we also had on-the-ground reporting. We had analysis. We had, explaining the weight of this moment and unpacking exactly what's going on. And you really saw that in the numbers. And it's impossible to track down who's watching what YouTube video. I have a feeling that a lot of the people who are watching that are not from Houston. They probably were like, I want this sort of content, and just logged into YouTube and saw that we had that on there, and it worked out.
Well, we sit here in Houston, but we speak to the world.
Yes.
Just one last thing on all of this. You said an outlet not readily available. Speaking of outlets not readily available, your most recent story is about something I brought up when this was going on. It was the space toilet.
It was the space toilet. The headline that we went with is a direct quote. It was someone from NASA saying that they were go for number 2. That's exact wording during a press conference. We were at the Johnson Space Center doing these press conferences, and we ended up talking like 3-year-olds essentially, because we were talking about number 1 and number 2 of what's okay for the astronauts to do. And there's a quote from one of the flight directors who just completely straight face said, "They are go for number 2. It's number 1 that we're having the issues with," which is hilarious.
If you want to know more about that, you can go to HoustonPublicMedia.org and actually read the story and learn more about number 1, number 2, and space travel, which I assume they're going to have fixed for the next Artemis.
That's the hope. That's the hope. Is they have a toilet.
Anyway, we've got a lot more. We're coming out of bathroom talk into something else. We've got a lot more on the show today. We're going to be talking about the outlook for clean energy when we look across our state. And also, we are going to be talking about some upcoming events you're not going to want to miss. They're events with a purpose. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. But as always, we start the show with the headlines. And Michael agreed he would help us out with the headlines today.
I would. Drum roll, please. A U.S. negotiating team is headed to Pakistan today for a second round of peace talks with Iran, the latter of whom says it might not even show up. Tehran's reticence comes after the U.S. on Sunday fired on and seized one of its cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz as part of Washington's blockade on Iranian vessels in the vital waterway, and just 2 days before the ceasefire is set to expire. A video released by U.S. Central Command shows the operation, with Marines descending from a helicopter by rope to board the vessel, the Tuska, after guided missile destroyer USS Spruance disabled Tuska's propulsion. President Trump said Sunday the U.S. military had, quote, stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the engine room after the ship failed to heed repeated warnings. Trump said Marines then took control of the vessel and moved to investigate its cargo. He said the Iranian-flagged ship was under the existing U.S. Treasury Department sanctions. Iran's Revolutionary Guard warned it will take action against the U.S. military for the seizure of that ship without elaborating. The April 8th ceasefire agreement between the U.S. and Israel and Iran is set to expire on Wednesday. What do you guys think? It's a very complicated subject, but let us know your thoughts. Give us a call, 713-440-8870, or as always, just that YouTube chat. Let us know what you think.
Okay, surprise. I've got a lot of thoughts on this one.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. I don't even know where to start. I think I'll start with the actual ship that they struck. If I am not mistaken, it is a ship that has been known to carry materials for their missile program. So it wasn't just a ship. There may have been more logic into why this ship was something that was so important for the U.S. to strike, that it wasn't just a ship crossing the border, but it had the potential to aid them in this war against us or with us or between us, however you want to do that. Yes, a blockade against a blockade seems like an interesting way to approach things. And there was the Pakistan Field Marshal, General Munir, has told Donald Trump, they were in a phone call, and CNN is reporting, he said to Trump, your actions are actually making negotiations harder. And I guess when you look at this, the way Trump negotiates, if you even want to call it that, is unique at best, and I worry that others that are used to a more traditional way of moving through resolving conflict are in uncharted territories. I guess that's the best way to word it.
Yeah.
I think for us as a nation, a problem, and we've talked about this a number of times on the show, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. Regardless of what you think of the president, he is a master of spin. He loves to create a story and spin a story. He doesn't seem as tied to truth and facts when he spins. And that may work great on crowd size and bluster and all of that. When you're in international negotiations and there is a war happening, that spin, I think, is detrimental to the U.S. It leaves us as a nation not sure what's going on. I mean, the fact you even say here in the story is we are going to peace talks where one of the people we are having peace talks with, Iran, says, we never even agreed to this. Yet the U.S. is saying, oh, yeah, these peace talks are scheduled and we're going ahead. I think that makes it very hard for us as a nation to understand what's happening, to get behind what's happening. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a few different things. I think one of the things that is particularly remarkable about the way that this war, the direction that it's taken, is I think there's this common perception of the Trump administration that, particularly from critics, that it's just chaos. It's all chaos. And I think a lot of people are quick to say that this war is all chaos. And I think there's an argument to be made for that. I also think there's a lot of deliberate action on the Trump administration. I don't think that this is all madness. I think that there is a lot of coordination and a lot of, strategy behind this, whether you agree with it or not. And I think that you kind of touched on that when you talked about the military action that happened over the weekend with this ship. I think it's deliberate. It's not necessarily just, let's just, fire on whatever that's coming and see what happens. It is very deliberate, I think. I also think that there's something to be said about, you touched on the president and the way that he tells a narrative. I think you can also make that argument that I was just making with the president himself. I think that President Trump is someone who a lot of critics write him off as saying whatever's on the top of his mind, speaking willy-nilly. But I do think there's a very deliberate nature with the way that he tells his stories and the way that he talks and what resonates with people. There's a question of how much that is holding on in the second Trump administration now that he is less hesitant to take the actions that he wants, whether it was Venezuela, whether it was Iran. Nothing of that caliber really happened during the first Trump administration, to my recollection. And so I think that it's interesting to see how bolder he is, how much more bold is the word I'm looking for. He is how emboldened he is with less restraint, essentially.
I would almost say he bloviates. Is that the term?
Bloviates. That's a big word.
And I think that negotiation, and I agree with you. I think oftentimes the circus that surrounds what's going on masks the deliberate nature of a lot of actions. And to some degree, it's a wonderful smokescreen for them to be able to do the actions they want. And it also his critics are on unsteady ground when all of this is going on, so they can't stop things that Trump wants to move or the Trump administration wants to move forward with. But I think it's a problem when we as a nation, we are still a democracy or a republic, and the people need to have factual information being shared with them. I understand there is a need for security around things, but misnomers, things like we've won the war, that he said within, the first 48 hours.
Right.
Then the war is over within the first week. Well, we're how many weeks in now? It obviously wasn't over. They came to me with a program. They came to me with points they wanted. They say, no, we didn't. These are what we... All of that confusion, I think, creates unease in a nation that was already feeling stressed. And I don't think that it rewards us not to have a leader-in-chief who can say that we can trust what they say. So that's just a concern I have. 713-440-8870. Let's go to the phone. Chris is on from Cyprus. Chris, what are you thinking today?
Hi. I was thinking about the exact same thing. It's almost like Trump, wants to project chaos and confusion, but there are different objectives. If you look at the targets and that they're going after, and I think the U.S. has a different agenda and Israel has a different one. And those two are in coordination with what it is that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what do you think the outcome is going to be here? How much longer? Where do you think we're going? What are your thoughts on all of it?
They've gone down a rabbit hole, and I think they didn't listen to Colin Powell when he said, "You break it, you buy it."
Mm-hmm. Worrisome thought. Chris, thank you for calling and sharing with us. The idea of you break it, you buy it. From what you're looking at, what do you think? How long are we going to be marred in this?
Well, I think about I was on my drive this morning, and I passed by a gas station that had prices at $4.09. And immediately, I'm a young guy. My brain went to 2022 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and about how there was just such an obsession with gas prices after that. And, I was working in Missouri at the time, actually, so not quite the oil state that Texas is. And I remember seeing gas that was about $6 in Missouri. And as a young journalist, we do not make a lot of money. And that was hard for me. I remember thinking, I really have to be cautious about what's worth driving for, what's worth getting out of the house for.
As an old journalist, we don't make a lot of money.
But I mean, there's just eventually things regulated in terms of what it meant to the American consumer. Gas prices went down. We don't talk about the Russian war in Ukraine at the moment, but it's still happening. That's still there. And so just this idea of what's it going to take to wrap it up? Obviously it's different. We weren't directly involved in the Russian war. We were, on the sidelines essentially of that, but that's still going on. We're still going through that. And so, I think as far as this intervention in Iran, it's tough to say. It's tough to predict what this is going to look like. You've got President Trump, who's someone who wants to win and doesn't want to give up until he wins. But, it's looking like uncertain at the moment for him. And so it's not clear what he's going to want to do after this.
Yeah. I know a story we want to cover, and we hope to do it sometime this week, is to look at negotiations and how international negotiations work, how they did in the past, how different it is this time, what it means, and how much we as the public should be in on what's happening in those rooms. I think it's important from I think we would both agree. We come from this idea that knowledge is power and we need to have it out there and you can't hide these things. But I also understand the need for security and as the general had said, or who was it? It was the Pakistani field marshal. Actions affect what happens in those negotiation rooms.
Sure.
713-440-8870. Wayne from West Houston is on the line. Wayne, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was an Eagle Scout, Boy Scout. Trustworthy is a huge, you're not a scout unless you're trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is not trustworthy. This guy, anything he says is a lie. But he's been getting away with it. He puts on this song and dance routine and, hey, people buy it,
Mm-hmm.
But he is not a trustworthy guy, so that you can't.
Wayne, but to what Michael had said a few minutes ago, do you think underneath the bluster and the storytelling that's happening to us and the public that there is a plan, that there is something at play that we just aren't privy to?
I don't know about that, but
I go back and forth on it myself, I'll tell you that.
Oh, God. It's just look at all the previous presidents. None of them has gotten us in any of this stuff like this. And Trump has just gone bonkers, man.
Yeah. Wayne, thank you for calling. Remember, as I remind people, every time they show displeasure or pleasure with their elected officials, make sure you're registered and you vote when you have that opportunity. That's the best way to have your voice heard. Doris on YouTube, one of our YouTubers, wrote, in my humble opinion, the Iran war was begun to distract from the Epstein files.
And that's interesting. I remember when the First Lady, Melania Trump, did a press conference a couple of weeks ago to say that she had no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, was not a victim of his. And people were like, where is this coming from? And I remember seeing on social media, a lot of people said that this was an effort to distract from the Iran war. But, who can know the mind of the Trump
it was my favorite comment. It was they started a war to distract from the Epstein files, and now they're talking about the Epstein files to distract from the war.
Exactly.
It's an interesting time. May we live in interesting times, is often said, and May we live in those times. We're going to continue on with the show. There's a lot more of Hello Houston to come. Remember, we're always interested in your thoughts, comments, and we'd like you to engage with us. 713-440-8870. Coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk about changing the outlook on clean energy for our state with a freelance reporter from the Texas Observer. That and more coming up right here on Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Meet Theo Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Get access to PBS Passport that lets you watch your favorite programs anytime you want. Support the programs you love and enjoy them on your own schedule with PBS Passport. Make your gift now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
I'm Stephen Dubner. On the next Freakonomics Radio, are you sure that squeeze bottle of honey in your cupboard is actually honey?
They're openly advertising designer syrups, saying mix this much with your honey to pass these certain tests to get into the United States.
The surprising economics of the honey industry. That's next time on Freakonomics Radio.
You can hear that tonight at 10 o'clock. Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now. Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer. Support comes from Theater Under the Stars, presenting Beautiful, the Carole King story. Feel the earth move as you sing along to the story of the legendary songstress. On stage at the Hobby Center May 19th through 31st. Tickets available at tuts.org. Support comes from NAMI Walks Greater Houston. Community walks supporting mental health education and support services through the National Alliance on Mental Illness. 2026 NAMI Walks Greater Houston. More at namiwalks.org/Greater Houston.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse.
And I'm guest host Michael Adkison in for Celeste. For the past decade, clean energy has been a growing part of Texas's economic future, bringing new revenue to rural communities and landowners while diversifying our energy markets. But now shifting political priorities and policy changes are putting many of those projects at risk. Today, we are joined by freelance journalist Laura Mallonee, who reported on the topic for the Texas Observer to help us understand what's changing the outlook for clean energy in our state. Laura, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks for having me.
You know, for many years, Texas was upheld as like the national leader when it came to wind and solar. What's changed? It's not that anymore, is it?
Well, it's definitely still, one of the biggest producers of clean energy. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 was a huge boost for clean energy in Texas. It expanded corporate incentives and made these projects very attractive to companies. Within the first 3 years after the IRA passed, companies invested $62 billion in projects in Texas. But last summer, the Trump tax bill kind of gutted a lot of those incentives and created a lot of uncertainty. There were companies that raced to finish projects or start projects before the deadlines to qualify. And then there were some companies that pulled back entirely.
Do you think it seems like an obvious question, but I'll ask it. Is this the right direction for us to be going as a state, considering the economic situation we currently face? Does it make sense in this moment to be relying back on older technologies, or is this the opportune moment where we should be looking forward to a new future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that it's not a great time to be cutting back on clean energy. Texas needs energy more than ever. The rise of data centers, AI, crypto is really pushing demand. And ERCOT expects that electricity demand, peak demand, is going to nearly double by 2030. So there's definitely a need for it. And, with or without incentives, wind and solar continue to be the cheapest form of electricity. So even despite these cuts, I think that, clean energy is continuing to grow. It's just a question of how quickly and at what cost.
Laura, I'm glad you mentioned that about the data centers and what ERCOT is projecting that's going to mean for energy demand. I think that in the wake post 2021, as we had that winter storm, it was a lot of catch up for Texas lawmakers and energy officials to, make sure that we have enough energy to keep the power on. Since then, a lot of the conversation has been around energy demand and what that's going to look like, particularly as we have the AI and data centers coming to Texas. And I think that now we're at this point where a lot of people had felt like, okay, we can catch our breath. We're good. We've passed these investments, we've passed these initiatives, and we're good. But now ERCOT is saying, hey, we actually need to double our energy output to keep up with all this. I mean, kind of tell me, is there a point from your perspective where we're going to be able to say, okay, we're good. We've made the investments that we can, and we're going to be satisfied once these data centers come. Are we going to reach that point, do you think?
That's a really good question. We're currently building a $33 billion transmission line to try to meet that demand. But, the state continues to grow. And so it's hard to see an end to the electricity needs. I think it's a big question right now.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk rural Texas, because there was so much of this idea that clean energy projects were going to reshape these communities. Where are we at with that? And what happens now with this shift away from them too? How does it impact rural Texas?
Yeah, I mean, clean energy has been a big boost for rural Texas and really just across the state. A report came out last year and it said that, $50 billion is how much landowners and local governments stood to gain from clean energy projects. And that included, 3/4 of the 254 counties in the state. In West Texas, particularly, those economies were built around oil and gas, but it's very volatile. It booms and it busts. And so in one county that I looked at, Scurry County, I talked to the county judge, and he said that, these projects, even though he has a lot of oil and gas, it's still 80% of his tax base. The clean energy projects really help stabilize his budget. They create reliable payments that don't fluctuate. And, unlike manufacturing, which a company can move its factory at any time, he sees wind and solar farms as a lot more stable. And it's very similar for landowners out there as well. A lot of them, they may have an oil and gas well or wells that, produced a lot back in the 80s and now maybe, buy them a couple hamburgers a month. So these payments can be really crucial for them, and help cushion them and help them keep their ranches together.
If I'm not understanding this incorrectly, and help me through this, if you were relying on what I'm calling old technologies, oil, gas, the past, and you started down this road toward the new technologies, the solars and all of that, and the wind, had they converted over, and is this change in philosophy hurting them, and it would be extremely costly for them to step back? Or was it different players coming into the marketplace and these old group are still doing what they were doing?
It really varies. It depends from, county to county. In Scurry County, it's still very strong oil and gas. But there are other counties like Schleicher County. It had a lot of oil and gas back in the 80s. It also had a really strong wool industry. And both of those things have collapsed. And so the county never really recovered. It has struggled. It has an elementary school that, it leaks. There's flooding issues and they can't afford to fix it. And so that county, Schleicher County, it's an example of a place that could really benefit from the new technology. In recent years, it's gotten a few different projects, a couple wind farms and a solar farm that's under construction right now. And one of those wind farms alone has contributed $16 million in the past six years to the local economy, which is pretty significant for a county that runs on like $9 million a year. But right now, there are several projects in the works. One of the projects talked about in recent years was this big green hydrogen project, and it was going to benefit local landowners and the government to the tune of $1.2 billion, which would have been a real game changer. But just in the past year, the company has kind of pulled back on that. They're not really talking about it anymore. They didn't respond to my requests, but local officials told me that that project is canceled and that it's kind of morphed more into a wind solar battery thing, which is significant just because, you know, the Trump tax cuts or the tax bill, it took apart the hydrogen credits and incentives. It used to be that you could get $3 per kilogram produced. And I talked to a researcher at UT, and he said that green hydrogen projects aren't really going to be viable without those credits.
Let me, two questions there, because I think earlier you had mentioned something to the effect of without the incentives, they were still going to move forward on these new technologies. But what you just said there makes me think maybe not. Where does it stand without the benefits?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely hydrogen, which I just mentioned, green hydrogen is hit really hard by these rollbacks. It's unlikely that a lot of those projects will move forward without it. But other projects like wind and solar, researchers, they say that these projects are going to continue. They'll just be more expensive. And ultimately, that means pricier electricity and, you know, slimmer returns for counties that would hope to benefit.
And the flip side of that is with the whole, and I know I'm phrasing it from an old term, drill, baby, drill, but that whole mindset in the U.S. right now from the administration is more oil, more gas, let's go, 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 go. Could the surplus in that, the revitalization of that, the amount of money that bring in offset what we lose by outside of the ecological concerns of it, but just the pure money base of it? Does this emphasis on oil and gas lift up the state enough to make up for what they're losing in these new technologies?
You know, that's a good question. My reporting didn't really go into that a whole lot. I really looked at more of the stakes for these rural counties, which are pretty high.
I guess what I'm saying, though, is those rural counties with an emphasis back on oil and gas, can they still recoup what they lose, or have they rebuilt their economies around this new technology, and therefore, yeah, somebody's going to be rich off of the oil and gas, but it's not necessarily going back to the communities?
Yeah, I mean, but some of these communities, they just don't have oil and gas anymore. That's definitely the case for Schleicher County. It had a big boom in the 80s, but that's really trickled, and there's no real going back to that. And so, the county judge is really looking for any industry that might come in and help boost his revenue. And clean energy is one of those industries. And so if more projects come, he's, welcoming that.
Laura, a couple of questions. I think that this is a story that I think resonates with a lot of people because they want their electricity to work. They want their lights to come on when they flip the light switch. And we talk about energy demand. We're getting some questions in from our YouTube. Alex Garza asks, what's the realistic outlook for clean energy growth in Texas now? Kind of just if I can add my own words to that I think that a lot of Texas officials have said, we've done enough investing in clean energy. It's time to make sure that we've got the lingo that they use is dispatchable energy, that we have our investments in dispatchable energy in place. Kind of with that perspective, where do you see the energy and clean energy conversation going from here in Texas?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, kind of just talk to me about, what you see the outlook of all this being for clean energy. Where is the conversation going to go from here for clean energy investments in Texas as you see it?
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, it's just going to continue. I don't think anyone doubts that clean energy is going to continue in the state. It's just going to be more expensive. And, where this goes and what future administrations bring, I think people are hopeful that there could be policy change. But, the outlook is still that we need this energy, and it's going to continue.
Our number here is 713-440-8870. If you would like to join the conversation, Larry does, and he's from Clear Lake and on the line right now. Larry, what's on your mind?
Well, it seems to me, and it's been suggested in various places, that the AI and crypto centers should be able to provide their own power with the money that they are expected to make and the amount of power that they need. It certainly is viable for them to set up their own centers. And secondly, when we speak of totally clean energy, even the aeolic, that's to say the wind farms and the photovoltaic or the solar farms, they are not entirely free of side effects. It costs a lot of on the environmental side to produce all of that equipment. And finally, when it wears out, to get rid of it. Those are my two thoughts.
Larry, thank you very much for calling. We are talking with freelance journalist Laura Mallonee, who is writing about the changing landscape of clean energy industry in Texas. Laura, your reactions to Larry's comments?
Yeah, I think that, that's a concern that a lot of people share. Ranchers out in West Texas, even ranchers who embrace clean energy and have windmills on their property, they're concerned about environmental impacts. Ranchers are conservationists at heart. If they don't have the land, they can't ranch. And different people have different worries. There are worries about, the recyclability of these windmill blades. People worry about solar panels and are they going to create a heat island? I talked to this one rancher and he has windmills on his farm and they're building a solar farm right next door. And he's worried that solar farm is going to drive deer and coyotes and, things onto his property. And as a rancher, he works with a biologist to really maintain that, the ecosystem. And so that's a concern that he has. There's also concerns about water depletion when it comes to green hydrogen projects. People are concerned about the water, obviously, and you can't ranch without water. So that's a real concern that a lot of ranchers have. There's a woman I talked to in Schleicher County, and the way she put it, her concerns about it were that she thought that, I think the quote was, the only thing that's green about green energy is the cash coming from the government. Yeah, I think it kind of hits on an urban-rural divide as well. I think some of these concerns are legitimate, concerns about water. But it also touches on, a deep nerve. Some people feel that, West Texas is being asked to change and accommodate these facilities to create energy for people in cities that don't have to live with the impact. So I think that that's an important question and something to think about. And just in my own reporting has made me think a lot more about, the impacts of the energy I use in places where I don't live.
713-440-8870 if you'd like to join the conversation. Marie from Cyprus is on the line. Marie, what's on your mind?
Well, I remember a while back, T-Bone Pickens said that oil and gas is not a finite resource. And it seems as though the United States is really running out of oil and gas. That's why we're getting it from the Middle East. But here in Cyprus, my utilities have been cycling off. I've been running out of power on a daily basis. It just blacks out. And I'm concerned that these data centers, all of these data centers, these 400 and whatever number of data centers here in Texas, is really affecting our electricity.
Marie, thank you for those comments. Let's find out what Laura thinks about that. Laura.
Yeah, I think data centers are something that, everybody in the state is worried about and, how they're going to impact us all. My reporting didn't really focus particularly on data centers, but it is something that, out in West Texas, they're seeing a lot more of. But, Dallas has the most data centers of anywhere. So it's something that, affects people in cities as well.
Well, we talk about, and Marie brings up this point, the cycling on and off of energy in different areas. If oil and gas, and I know we kind of have taken the position from the administration that we got more oil and gas than we know what to do with, and we're going to drill, and everything's great. But then why are we feeling these pinches? Why are there problems with the grid and delivery of all that? Do we have enough power? And what happens when you reduce the input of these new clean energies into the system?
Yeah, I think that's why, green energy is continuing to develop. Ultimately, we do need this power. Ultimately, oil and gas is a finite resource, and we do need to look forward to the future and find new ways to produce energy. And that's why, despite these cuts, it's unlikely that clean energy is going to ultimately, suffer too much. It is taking a hit, but it's going to continue.
Yeah. Laura Mallonee is a freelance journalist. Laura, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston and helping us understand this situation a little bit better.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Coming up, louder than silence. Intriguing. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Meet Gamola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Gamola to learn more about his ride.
Has a whole new cast of characters and all new beef.
This season is a more passive-aggressive beef.
My conversation with the creator of the show on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
You can hear it tomorrow morning starting at 5 a.m.
Can't get enough PBS programming? PBS Passport is an added member benefit that offers exclusive streaming access to many of your favorite programs on the PBS app. Whether you're an NPR listener, a PBS watcher, or both, your ongoing donations of at least $5 per month qualify for PBS Passport. Make your gift now to start watching at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Support comes from JAMS, introducing mediator and arbitrator Paul D. Clote, providing alternative dispute resolution services in complex business and commercial disputes in Houston, Austin, and Central Texas. Paul D. Clote. More at jamsadr.com.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. With the generous support from our founding sponsor, Kathy Sanders.
Support comes from Elmore, communicating with clarity and inspiration, collaborating with executive leadership to create expert internal and external communications strategy. Elmore. Listen, clarify, communicate. More at elmorepr.com. Support for Houston Public Media comes from electricityplans.com, helping Houstonians find electricity plans based on home energy usage and rate comparisons. Enrollment details and more at electricityplans.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse.
It has been a fascinating first 47 minutes of the show.
Something like that, yeah.
Are you ready to get your 80s groove on?
My 80s groove. You don't want to know where I was in the 80s.
Groove? Yeah, I was going to say, you're such a child. You don't remember any of this. But you know what? In recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, the Forensic Center of Excellence, which provides 24/7 trauma-informed forensic medical care to survivors of interpersonal violence, is holding an 80s-themed fundraising concert this Saturday to help support survivors of sexual assault. The event is named Louder Than Silence and will feature sensations from the 80s, including Information Society's Christopher Anton and When in Rome's Clive Farmington. Here to tell us more about the work that they are doing, a familiar face. Also, you may not know, she is a licensed clinical social worker, Chau Nguyen. Hello there, Chau.
So good to see you, Ernie.
And who do you have with you?
Our development director for TXFNE. This is Liz Selig.
Liz,
hey,
welcome
how
also.
are you?
And say the name of the group, how you say it.
Well, it's the Texas Forensic Nurse Examiners. That's the acronym for TXFNE. And then our sidebar name is the Forensic Center of Excellence.
It's a lot to digest.
It's a lot.
Yes. But it's not a lot to come out and enjoy a wonderful day of fun music. Tell me a little bit about what you've put together, and then we'll get into the work you folks actually do.
Okay, so on Saturday, the 25th, from 2 to 5 p.m., we're going to be having a fundraising concert, as you mentioned, from 2 to 5 p.m. And it's family friendly, it's all ages. 13 and up is $50 admissions, and kids, obviously 12 and under, are free. Christopher Anton and Clive Farrington are performing. We're also going to have friendship bracelet making and tie-dye stations. We have a Hope and Healing Center that HEB sponsored, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
The idea, and Chau, maybe you can help me with the idea of something so serious, so important, put with something so much fun and I wouldn't say frivolous, but lighthearted and joyful. How do those two worlds merge for you?
Hope and healing are possible. Sexual assault is a serious issue, right? It's very prevalent. 1 in 6 women and girls face some sort of sexual assault, and sexual assault is defined as any unwanted sexual contact. So there's a spectrum when it comes to sexual assault. But listen, I'm a counselor at TXFNE. We support survivors there, whether it be through forensic interviews, medical forensic testing, that's rape kits, advocacy counseling. Those are serious issues, and we offer that support free and confidential to this community. But this is a month to raise awareness, to say, listen, your voice can be heard. A lot of times survivors suffer in silence. So this is a celebration of sorts. This is our agency's first fundraising event, and so we wanted to make it fun, family-friendly, and inclusive for everybody. The public is welcome. $50 gets you a great seat listening to really fun music, and we know the songs from Information Society and When in Rome. We can all sing them. So we really encourage everybody to come out and just listen. It's just an opportunity to say, hey, we hear you, we believe you, we support you, survivors.
Liz, let me talk to you a little bit about where we are today when it comes to all of this, when we talk about sexual assault. And I think conventional wisdom would say we are moving past it. We had the Me Too movement. Everyone was talking about it much more openly. From political news, even with Epstein files, there's much more conversation about what this all means. But on the other hand, it's more prevalent than ever, and it continues to plague us as a society, and how important it is to be doing the work you folks do in a time where people may be thinking, we've grown up from this.
Yeah, so obviously all of the horrible events that have gone on are, I don't even have positive words that we could say on the air. I will say, I think the little glimmer light is that it's bringing more awareness to sexual assault, domestic violence, et cetera. And so, and as Chau mentioned, what does that mean? It's not just someone a stranger in the night breaking into your home. In terms of what we do at TXFNE, so we originally were founded in 2018 as Harris County Nurse Examiners, and we provide medical forensic exams. And so not a lot of people...
Pause you there for 1 second.
Yes.
Explain what a
Sure.
forensic exam means.
So,
people all of a sudden thinking forensic dead
right,
bodies.
CSI, right. Yeah. So it's what a lot of people know as a rape kit. Back in the teens, and that's not even that long ago, and I feel like I'm old saying that. It was, there was only 5 places in the greater Houston area that performed medical forensic exams or rape kits. And so, and you had to know to go to those places, 2 of those being Ben Taub and Harris Health. And so if you happen to go to an ER or a clinic or a doctor's office or something like that, and they didn't have someone who was trained, oftentimes you're turned away. And I can't fathom being in that moment of crisis and someone saying, sorry, we can't help you. Or you wait for a day and then they say, oh, well, you may have to come back later. I mean, that's just crappy. So what our founder did is she recognized the challenge, and she basically created Texas Forensic Nurse Examiners. And so we are kind of a mobile forensic nursing program. And so what happens is that we work with hospitals, clinics, standalone ERs, universities, et cetera, and they call us and say, hi, we have this patient who's presented, and then we have to dispatch within 90 minutes to whatever that location is. And then it's, the exams are free, no charge, they're confidential, so it's not like you have to use insurance or worry about paying. And we also do adult forensic interviews, which are basically a trauma-informed interview where if you are telling your story to, for example, the police or the DA, a lot of times people, they're required to tell their story over and over, which of course is re-traumatizing. And then and then some things may come out later and people question you about inconsistencies. Well, the adult forensic interview program, you basically have to tell your story once, and you tell it in a neutral, trauma-informed setting. And so then that person who is the trained interviewer can ask you. The police or the DA can watch remotely. And so if they have questions, they can talk to the interviewer later. But we're the first ones who created that adult forensic interview program. And so we piloted it off of a children's forensic interview program. So, and then we have counseling and advocacy services, and Chau is one of our great counselors who helps out a lot of our survivors.
Kind of on the front lines, right?
What I want to ask you about is the stigma that comes with all of this and why it is so important to have a place where someone feels comfortable enough to come and get tested, to have this work done, to have someone to talk to, because so many people just hold on to it and live. And I don't want to use the term shame, but keep it buried inside.
I can't tell you, there has not been one client I have seen who hasn't doubted themselves. Was this my fault? Could I have done something differently? Maybe I didn't speak out. Maybe I shouldn't have gone to that bar. What I tell clients is, one, it is never your fault. You did nothing wrong, right? You are to be believed and supported. It is the perpetrator's fault who did this to you. And the good news is you can get healing. Healing is possible from the shame and stigma. And look, a lot of clients who get those rape kits, they don't have to navigate the complex criminal justice system. That's a very difficult entity to enter and to receive justice. So oftentimes I say, listen, hope and healing is possible. Justice is a little tricky. But they deserve to be seen and supported and believed. Mm-hmm. And that is the message that we continue to share time and time again.
This may seem like a foolish question, but who should come for your services? When should you look at a situation and be like, you know what, that didn't feel right to me?
You know what? We have a hotline 24/7. It's confidential. It's 281-308.
No. 281-306-6893, or you can visit our website too, which is txfne.com.
But to answer your question, anybody, if something doesn't feel right, if you woke up the next day, which I hear a lot from my clients saying something didn't feel right, I woke up at someone's house, I think I drank too much, I don't remember things, just call. And we can help support you and guide you, and you can make the decision whether or not you want to go to the hospital, you want to come to our clinic, or you just want to talk to a counselor.
And it doesn't have to just also, we do more than just sexual assault exams. So domestic violence, intimate partner violence, any basically type of violence. We also see individuals with elder abuse, child abuse, human trafficking. So
any victim of violence
yes.
is free to call.
Yeah. Ernie was talking a little bit about the moment that we're in right now. I'm curious what you guys think with just a couple of minutes left. I think that between the Jeffrey Epstein files, what we've seen in Congress in recent weeks with, and then Cesar Chavez, I feel like we're in this moment almost like Me Too 2.0. Walk me through to just this moment and what it means to have an event like this.
It can be very confusing when survivors hear these stories that come up, and it's like you take 2 steps forward with Me Too. Survivors' voices are being heard, and they're speaking out advocacy, and advocacy is taking place, and they're advocating for their friends and family members. You take 2 steps back. The thing about the Chavez case is that those victims suffered in silence for decades, but it doesn't mean that they can't, that there's a deadline to tell their stories, that justice can't be served, and that hope and healing are possible. It doesn't matter.
Speaking of hope and healing, really quickly, Louder Than Silence. It's going to be at Patterson Park in the Heights. What can you tell me? Where can people find more information?
TXFNE.com.
Well, please go there. Liz Chau, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
in and sharing with us today. Go out there. It's going to be a celebration of the 80s, my favorite music period. Anyway, thank you for coming in today. We got a lot more still to come on the show, so don't go anywhere. Hello Houston continues right after the news.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Classical Theater Company, presenting Shakespeare's Othello. April 16th through May 2nd, the classic tragedy explores the evils of jealousy, misinformation, and racism. Performance details at classicaltheater.org.
Good morning. Looking for a chance of showers today. About a 30% chance of rain, the high getting up to near 70. Currently it's 68. Your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, the Supreme Court has ruled that banning conversion therapy is a violation of free speech protections. We'll discuss this ruling and more of the top headlines of the day. I'm Ernie Manouse. We'll also talk with a Houston Education Research Consortium researcher about what's driving changes in public student enrollment and what those changes could mean for local school districts. Plus, we'll also be visited by Magpie and Peacocks. They'll share with us about their unique Houston-based nonprofit design house. And we want to hear from you. So give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org and clicking the purple box.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Importers who paid tariffs that were later found to be illegal can now start formally requesting refunds. NPR's Scott Horsley reports customs officials have set up an online system in an effort to streamline the process.
The Supreme Court ruled back in February that President Trump had overstepped his authority in ordering double-digit tariffs on virtually everything the U.S. imports. A specialty trade court later ordered the government to refund all the money it collected with those tariffs, $166 billion in all. Since then, customs officials have been scrambling to set up a computerized system where importers can ask for their money back without having to go through a lengthy court process. Some of the more complicated refund requests will have to wait for a later phase of the program, but most are eligible today. Refunds are expected to be paid in 60 to 90 days. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump says he thinks his energy secretary is, quote, totally wrong in predicting that drivers won't see gas prices drop back under $3 a gallon for at least several more months. Yesterday, Secretary Chris Wright told CNN the decline, quote, could happen later this year, might not happen until next year. Well, today, Trump told a reporter from The Hill gas prices will drop as soon as the U.S.-Iran war ends. Industry experts say it will take time. The U.S. delegation plans to travel to Islamabad soon, according to an official familiar with the plan speaking on background because they're not authorized to speak on the record. The statement was in response to NPR's question about whether lead negotiator Vice President J.D. Vance was still planning to go to Pakistan. This comes ahead of tomorrow night's ceasefire deadline between the U.S. and Iran. Pope Leo XIV is in Angola on his third stop on a tour of 4 countries in Africa where the Catholic Church is rapidly growing. The trip has come amid attacks from the Trump administration over the war in Iran, but this past weekend, the first American pope tried to downplay those tensions. NPR's Emmanuel Akunwotu reports.
Pope Leo has sought to return the focus of his 11-day tour in Africa away from growing tensions with President Trump. In Angola, his his third stop on the tour. He said some of his statements against war had been interpreted as a direct response to attacks against him by President Trump last week.
It was looked at as if I was trying to debate, again, the president, which is not in my interest at all.
Nearly half of Angola's almost 40 million people are Catholic, and on Sunday, Leo visited a sanctuary where enslaved Africans were forcibly baptized before being taken to the Americas. He made a speech acknowledging the, quote, sorrow and great suffering, but stopped short of directly referencing slavery or the church's role in it. Emmanuel Akimotu, NPR News, Lagos.
U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Nasdaq is down roughly 0.5% or 136 points. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. A court will hear evidence this Thursday challenging the legality of a move by the Department of State Health Services to bar Texas businesses from selling most consumable hemp products. The rules also sharply increased fees for businesses that sell hemp-based products that are still legal. Melanie Carpenter is owner of Serenity Organics and one of the plaintiffs challenging those rules.
Taking 40% of my business away and then making me pay $4,845 more is extreme. And so we are hoping that we get, again, the temporary injunction and then a permanent injunction on the key points that we're suing the state for.
If the court does not issue an injunction Thursday, the rules could go back into effect Friday, when the temporary restraining order against them expires. We're officially less than 2 months out from the first World Cup match in Houston. Top FIFA officials were in Houston last week for what will likely be their final visit to the city before the tournament. They told reporters Houston is very well prepared to host its 7 matches. Here's FIFA's Amy Hopfinger.
Whether it's the transportation plans, whether it's the security plans, this is not recreating the wheel for Houston. It's taking what exists and making sure that it's ready for the World Cup.
Houston is also set to host a base camp for the Democratic Republic of Congo during the tournament. In sports, well, the Astros are on the road and, unfortunately, on a fresh 4-game losing streak. They open up in Cleveland against the Guardians at 5:10 p.m. this afternoon. Your check of weather, mostly cloudy with showers possible after the noon hour, a high today of 70. Tonight, mostly cloudy, low around 62, and a 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms. Right now, mostly cloudy, 68 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Tom Perumian. News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And hello. I hate it when Jim misleads you. That's Jimbo who does the announcing for us. He's our executive producer, and he told you it was Celeste Diaz-Sherman, but it's not. It is our guest host for the day, Michael Adkison. Hello,
No,
Michael.
I'm Celeste.
Oh, you are?
I'm Celeste.
I got to clean these glasses a little bit.
Haven't you heard? No.
Well, it's good to have you here, whoever you are, Michael.
Thank you.
And I hope you find within yourself who you truly are.
Who I am, yes.
Who you really are. But we had a fascinating first hour, and I have to say, talking about energy security for the future, and there's all this talk about the data centers and AI and all that eating up all that energy. And one of our callers made reference to the fact that those centers have said, they'll provide their own energy. But I don't even know what that means. Are they how are they powering the sources to make power even? And it seems as though it's still going to be a draw. Somebody who knows a lot more than us will be able to help me understand that.
Yeah, I think what makes this story so interesting to me is it's such a complicated story. It's such a complicated subject. And no one really, I feel like the common people, nobody really knows with 100% certainty what the answer is or what's going on. I think a lot of times in news, we cover stories from the top down, if you will, which is, you know, the Iran war, how that's affecting local Houston gas prices. We take the big picture stories and work our way down of what it means for Houstonians. And I feel like this is almost the opposite, that this story is working its way from the bottom up, that a lot of people are hearing about a data center that's opening in their neighborhood, want to know more, and now it's becoming this whole national conversation about what data centers mean and what that means for energy and everything that a lot of people have opinions on and want answers, want clarity, essentially.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We put a poll question up. If you're not following us on YouTube, you're missing half the show. You can watch us on YouTube, and our YouTubers are there all the time. We put up poll questions quite often on our chat group there. And the one today that went up was, as data centers expand across the U.S., would you consider selling your property for development? And our leading answer was, no, I'd rather keep my property, 68%. But 19% were, yeah, for the right price. And not sure or need more information was 13%. Okay, property baron Michael, would you sell your property for a data center?
It's tough to say. They don't want my property at the moment. But it's like, you know, right price. Maybe that right price is 3 times what your home is worth, you know? Like, who's to say what the right price is? Again, it's that transparency and not knowing exactly where this money's coming from and how much there is and everything like that. So who's to say? Maybe the right price. What about you?
Well, when I think of price and stuff such as that, my partner lives right outside of downtown, right in Midtown, and has the only residence on his block. And they're often calling him to buy his property because they want to buy the block and build something big on it. And they always give him like kind of market value for the place, but he has rental properties in it. He is all paid off on it. So I've always said, you tell them $5 million or nothing. He's like, but it's not worth $5 million. I'm like, it is to the right buyer. It's worth it, because to move, find something of adequate space and size that you also can generate income off of and also is all paid off. How much is that worth to you?
Exactly.
So I guess these data companies would have to offer us a lot of money for my tiny little plot where my townhouse is. I don't think they'll get much for it. So
we were also talking about, you know, solar panel farms in the last hour.
Yeah.
And like that's similar conversation of just like what that means for homeowners and property owners and the opposition that a lot of people have to it because of what they think it's going to do to the environment and everything like that.
She also brought up the point about the farmers that are saying if there's the solar panels put on a farm, what does it do to the wildlife? And I'd never really think in those terms of it. But each little move we make impacts that butterfly effect, everything around us, and it goes on and on. And I think all too often decisions are made in the finite moment point as opposed to looking at the ripples that it causes.
It feels like first grade science. We're talking about ecosystems and you know, the predators and the...
I knew you were young, but first grade. Speaking of you being so young, we also talked about the upcoming event, the Louder Than Silence event that's happening this Saturday at Patterson Park in the Heights, which is an 80s concert for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And it'll have members from Information Society and When in Rome performing. And it's really exciting and a lot of fun. But 80s really wasn't your period, was it?
I go back and listen every now and then. But no, my parents made me listen to a lot of 80s rock. You know, when growing up,
hair rock
made me is the operative words there. Married me.
You don't know. Coming up soon, Eurovision. If you like 80s music, there's a lot of that. We'll be talking about that later in the month as it gets closer to May when Eurovision happens. On this show, though, today, we're going to be talking about a lot more stuff still to come. We're going to be talking more. School choice is coming up in the show. And also about a fashion house using recycled products to reduce the impact on, once again, the I want to say the ecology. What's the word? The environment.
The environment.
That's a better word for it. But as always, we are going to find out what's happening in the headlines. Michael, start us off.
The U.S. Supreme Court is reshaping how states can regulate therapy. In an 8-1 decision, the court ruled that banning certain types of counseling, including so-called conversion therapy, can violate free speech protections. Legal experts say they could have broader implications in Texas, where some argue it also protects gender-affirming care as constitutionally protected speech inside the therapy room. That does run counter to a recent opinion from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, which sought to restrict that care for minors. Still, some providers, though, remain cautious, warning the legal landscape is unsettled and how the ruling is applied will ultimately be decided in the courts. Controversial subject. Let us know what you think. Conversion therapy, gender-affirming care. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I love how you just tossed that out like this.
Controversial.
Yeah, nobody has an opinion on
Let me know
this
what you
one.
think about it.
This one I'm really torn about because I think conversion therapy does not do what it sets out to do. And many studies have shown that it does the opposite. It causes harm. It is destructive for a person the way it is done, because this isn't something that is a one day you wake up and this is what you want to be. It's something much deeper than that. So conversion therapy really doesn't work. It's kind of as simple and ignorant as it is to say, which is what I'm here to say. It's like when people were left-handed, and so they would smack your hand with a ruler if you didn't write with your right hand. Well, the truth of the matter was you were left-handed.
Right.
Smacking your hand with a ruler isn't going to change that. But then there's free speech. And so I think this is a subject that should be decided in medical bureaus, in medical groups, in understanding what therapy is accurate and functional and successful. And that's where we should limit or not limit. But when it comes to the government saying you can't talk about this, that's where I've got problems.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. Because then, as you say, then when you get to the other aspect of it and you talk about gender-affirming care, well, this protects that then too.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I think that when I worked in Austin covering politics, I would often have friends. I was in Austin. I would have friends who would say, how do you stay unbiased covering all of this? And, it's probably the number one question that every journalist gets. How do you remain unbiased? And, in short, it's almost impossible not to. But we try our best. And I think with something like this, with gender-affirming care, as the state legislature was moving forward with banning that, for me, it was this idea of whatever the issue, left, right, center, whatever the issue, when we're talking about a complete ban on something like that, it deserves a certain level of scrutiny. When you have Texas government saying you cannot do this, it deserves a certain level of scrutiny. And so I think that with gender-affirming care, it was so interesting to see the conversation. There are a few issues, I think, as polarizing as that. Not polarizing in the sense of who thinks what, but more of just what they think it is. That on a certain side, on one side of the aisle, gender-affirming care is violence, mutilation. And on the other side, it's protecting people from violence, that it is saying that you can be who you are and you no longer have to have certain risks of mental health and things like that. So there are a few issues that it's like there's no one in the middle on this. You either think it's right or it's wrong.
And just to clarify, though, the Supreme Court was talking about conversion therapy.
Sure, yes,
and that was the story, but it leads
opens
to
this door, yes. And, conversion therapy, it also makes me think of the way that we talk about how people can be what they are. And it makes me think of Paris Hilton and the camps. I don't know if you know this, that she was a big voice in Congress testifying against the camps that she got sent to, that sort of told her, rein in who you are, it's like a boot camp type and speaking about what you want. And it made me think of her, that this idea of like, how do we regulate free speech and how do we regulate protecting kids and protecting minors from doing the things that they want. It's a very complicated subject.
And what you have to keep in mind, the protection of free speech isn't to protect the speech that you like.
Right.
It's to protect all speech because, now that doesn't mean speech doesn't come with responsibility. If you say something, you have the right to say it, but you're also responsible for the actions caused by what you say. So I'm always leaning toward the free speech rule of it all. So when it comes to the conversion therapy thing, Yeah, I'm opposed to conversion therapy. And why am I opposed to it? Because the studies I see, what the health journals, I had some notes on it and I can't find them right now, pointing exactly to which medical institutions and organizations have said this causes more harm than good. I believe these researchers. I believe the science on it, so I'm opposed to conversion therapy. It's not because I'm gay that I'm opposed to it. If, in fact, it was something that helped some people to find who they felt comfortable being or what was right, then I would be like, okay. But it doesn't show that it works. That's not what it is. You're attacking a problem, a situation that you find problematic when it may not be, you know? And so this isn't the solution to it. I know my words are coming out like
I know it's complicated. It's a complicated subject, yeah.
But I have to say, I fear I agree with the Supreme Court on this because what we often lose, and when you're talking about journalists staying balanced and fair, I try to approach it. Justice Sotomayor did an episode of Interviews with me a few years back, and she talked about how people
just a casual drop right there.
Name drop. Yeah. Clunk.
Sonia and I.
Yeah. The people misunderstand what the Supreme Court actually does. They rule on the legality, on the constitutionality of issues. And so they're not looking at it as, is conversion therapy successful or not successful? They're looking at the free speech issue of it. And that's why you see so many of the justices fell in line with it across the board. So
it's tricky.
It is 713-440-8870. I am surprised you folks are not ringing up our lines on this one. But when you get to it, we are here for you to have this conversation. It's a hard subject and difficult to fully understand. Speaking of the Supreme Court, I'm going to move on to the next story.
All right.
And you can still share with us what you think of this Supreme Court ruling. We got another one. After weeks of uncertainty, the U.S. government is now beginning to refund tariffs.
Wow.
These tariffs were struck down by, once again, the Supreme Court. The new online portal opened Monday, allowing businesses to file claims for billions paid under these now invalid tariffs. But this is just the first phase. Not all imports qualify yet, and companies must apply, and the refunds won't be automatic. Once approved, payments could take 60 to 90 days to process. The rollout marks a turning point 2 months after the High Court ruled the tariffs unconstitutional, affecting more than 300,000 U.S. importers. So, business owners, are you headed to the refund portal? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
This one is so interesting to me. I think that as consumer advocates, we're always trying to say, here's how you can benefit yourself. And I think that this is one that we've gotten a lot of questions about is, okay, if tariffs are illegal, how do I get my money back? I've been paying money on these tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard it both from the consumer as well as, the businesses themselves that earlier last year, the Texas Restaurant Association did a report basically saying that a lot of restaurants are struggling firsthand as a result. As a reporter, I was a bit surprised they were so blunt about it, that it was because of policies from the Trump administration, whether it was tariffs, whether it was immigration. They said that a lot of businesses are struggling, that costs are increasing because it's costing a lot more to import these goods. So, I think that this is, hopefully going to provide some relief to these restaurants, but we'll see how this process works out. Again, a lot of uncertainty.
I am still not sure how it works.
Right.
And I know we hear all the tariffs, and the president will say tariffs are paid by these evil governments out there that need to be punished. But actually, we know they're paid by the importer. Coming into this country to get those products, you need to pay this added money on it. So I'm not sure how, when it gets to small business owners, I would assume that there is a middleman in the importing business that is bringing them in and then selling it to the small business owner. I don't know enough about this to know if the small business owner is importing their own goods or if there's a middleman.
You don't moonlight as an importer-exporter?
No, I don't. On the side there, I don't have a garage full of products I'm selling at a good price. I do have a garage full of stuff. But in that, then I don't know how you can claim how much was the effect of the tariffs, how much is inflation, how much is what's what that causes what to make the claim. But obviously, if there is this setup, there must be something. If you know more about this than I do, which pretty much if you know anything about this, you know more than I do on this one, give us a call, 713-440-8870. But I do want to see small business owners made whole. going back to our comments about the conversion therapy and the Supreme Court, Barbara's on the line from Magnolia. Barbara, what's on your mind?
Well, when I was listening to y'all talk about it, it just seemed to me that this points out how deeply embedded discrimination against the LGBT community is, and how pervasive it is that they want to ban gender-affirming care, which is the thing that helps the community, and they want to outlaw banning the thing that hurts the community.
Interesting way you put that, Barbara. I like that. Very succinct and understandable. Your thoughts on the Supreme Court, though, looking at this as there should be protection of free speech inside and outside of the therapy room. Your thoughts on that?
I think that free speech is a very important thing, but even when it's speech and not actual medical procedures or something, this is still a medical treatment. And I think that you have to weigh the damage that's being done. And I guess in both the conversion therapy and in the refusal to allow for gender-affirming care. I mean, you have kids that are committing suicide.
Right.
And to me, it's sort of like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
You absolutely, I believe in free speech. And I believe it's one of the bedrock things in our society, our government, our democracy. You can't have a democracy without free speech, but with everything there are limits. And to me, and I have a family member who is transgender, whom I love deeply and admire greatly, and I know that he has dealt with an awful lot in his life of people bullying him and just not accepting him.
Yeah.
And to me, this is one of the things that qualifies for the yelling fire in a crowded theater exception.
Barbara, thank you very much for sharing with us. And I want to say, this comes off sounding weird. I want to say I'm proud of you for your stance on your family member, but it's not something you need to be proud of. It's something that's human. And I appreciate you for recognizing the individuals in your family for who they are.
Well, I'm proud of him for who he is as an individual, and whether he is transgender or not means nothing to me.
Yeah. Barbara, thank you very much for calling and sharing your thoughts with us today. We had a comment that came in while we were trying to work through this topic. You want to read it for me?
Oh, you don't want to read it yourself, no. I suppose. Noah Espinoza writes, "We have many thoughts, Ernie, but we all must have felt like you were voicing them pretty well."
It seems like it was a hodgepodge of things, but I think even as Barbara points out, it's so complicated. There's so many different elements to it. We want to support free speech, but we also want to protect individuals. We don't want to do harm to individuals who need help and support. And yet, as a society, we still seem to be struggling with these same issues. And is there a clean-cut answer? I don't know what it is. But I know, as Barbara said, that free speech is the bedrock of our community, and we have to support that. But I stand by, we also have to realize that free speech comes with responsibility, and we all have to be responsible.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break on that note. When we come back, Houston Education Research Consortium is going to be here. They're going to be talking about what's driving changes in public student enrollment and what those changes could mean for our local school districts. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Houston Matters highlights the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. And we do it live on the air weekday mornings at 9 on News 88.7. But we know you're not always available then to listen. So subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, or find each day's program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
On the next Fresh Air, Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai on her life before and after she was shot by a Taliban gunman. Payback for standing up against the Taliban and advocating for her right and the right of all girls to go to school. She's serious about her ongoing advocacy, but has a delightful sense of humor. Join us.
You can listen to Fresh Air coming up tonight at 8 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor's work centers on advancing health and medicine through research, education, and patient care. Support comes from Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods, a Texas retailer offering wine, spirits, and finer foods, plus recipes and seasonal features, serving customers for 64 years. Details at specsonline.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse.
And I'm Michael Adkison. Across the Houston region, public school enrollment is shifting, but not always in ways people expect. A new study from Rice University's Houston Education Research Consortium shows that changing population patterns, family mobility, and school choice are all reshaping where exactly students go to school. To break it down, we're joined by HERC researcher Courtney Thrash to talk about what's driving these changes and what they could mean for local districts. Hey, Courtney, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing all right.
So I'm guessing the voucher system has not saved education yet.
We actually did not look at the voucher system at all yet, right? Families, I don't think, have even been notified that they've been selected. So that is definitely a concern, though, especially as we see that some districts with more charter schools, so more school choice, are seeing less of an alignment between births and enrollment than would be expected. So I do think we will see some shifts with that, but it remains to be seen.
And I bring that up just to let people know, this study was done without vouchers being in. Already this movement was happening.
Yes, yeah. So we wanted to look at what what publicly available data was out there that could be used. And so that does put a little bit of a lag on, because I think we used 2023 was the most recent at the time that we were doing the study. So yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be a very general question, but to kind of set the table for the conversation, why should this matter?
Districts have to contend with what's happening around them, right? And so they have to make really important decisions for their students, for their staff, for their teachers. And so they need this information available to them so that they can plan for the future, so that they know what's coming ahead. If they're expecting more students if more students show up for school than is expected and they can't meet that need, that's not okay. And then also if fewer students are coming and districts are having to shift and make decisions about what to do to serve a declining student population, they need that information in order to be able to make those decisions and to be able to make them in a timely manner. So they're being proactive and not reactive.
Is this more shifting of students or is it reduction of students?
If you look regionally, it's both. So if you look at the number of children being born in the Houston region, it has remained stable. So around between 2013 and 2023, it was between 93,000 children being born and 96,000 children being born. So it's remained relatively stable. But I think what we're seeing is a
big reshifting in where students are locating. So where children are being born, and then where we are seeing mobility out of the urban core into the suburbs and even exurbs of the region. Because even though births have been stable, the population of the region has grown by 2 million people.
This was a big talking point a few years back with the pandemic, that there was urban flight.
Right.
People wanted homes with yards and far away, and so they
Yes.
were moving out of the urban center.
Yes.
Are statistics supporting that?
I think so. I think so. And this is not unique to Houston. This is happening in other cities in the state. It's happening nationally. And it's also the life cycle of cities. We have seen this throughout the history of cities in the United States. The urban core gets really strong, and then people start moving out. And then inevitably people move back in. And it's like this it's just this movement
like a heart
that happens.
beating.
Yes.
It goes out, comes back in.
And
goes
right
out,
now, I think we are in the stage where people are moving out, especially families with children.
How does that then affect the education that students are getting?
It affects school funding. So most funding that school districts get is based on attendance. So it's based on the number of students, not only who are enrolled, but who are showing up every day, which is why they, want students every day. I mean, obviously but it also helps funding. So if you are losing students, if you're losing a significant portion of your student population, then you have to adjust to those changing needs. On the flip side, if you have more students, then you obviously have funding to be able to do things with. But yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's a huge driver of school funding.
Recently in the news, we've heard a lot about the shuttering of schools.
Mm-hmm.
From where you sit from the research point of view,
Mm-hmm.
does this just make sense? If the student population is getting smaller and they've got less resources
Mm-hmm.
because it's based on the number of students coming in is where they get their money, to consolidate into schools that have enough students in them, does it make fiscal sense what they're doing?
Obviously we were not involved in any of those decisions. So I'm not going to say whether I think it was right or wrong. I think that...
And I guess my question isn't,
Yeah.
is it right or wrong, but does the research
Yes.
support that move?
Yeah, so I think the research supports that something had to happen. Like, just given the changing demographics in the Houston region, we actually did a follow-up study looking at what's happening within HISD. So given, changes that have happened within HISD specifically, or there's also Aldine, there's been other districts. I think if you look at what's happened, the district had to respond in some way. School closures is one of the options that districts can take. And so does it make sense to me? Yes. Do I always think it's the right move or the wrong move? No. There's so many things that go into that. I think at this point, my concern is more to make sure that students and teachers and staff that are affected are adequately supported throughout the process, because we know there's been a lot of research on school closures and their effect.
Yeah, and can I just ask that? Do they feel adequately supported? Do you know if that's the case?
I do not. I've not spoken to any families that are affected by it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that. Just 'cause I haven't been involved.
Yeah, as a follow up, just in your research, looking at these changes and demographic changes and things like that, for the parents who are just considering completely moving, physical relocating, what are the decisions that they're making? What's factoring into that? What are they seeing in schools that say, I want to be somewhere else? If you have that information.
Yeah, so we haven't talked to parents yet. We are actually working on developing a survey that districts can use to look at students who stay in a district, but also students who leave a district, and kind of trying to get at those parental decision making and like what they look at when they think about where they want to send their child to school. So it is something we're developing right now that I'm also leading, but I don't have any results for that yet.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think there are a lot of factors. I think there are some families that do have the ability to move, that do have the ability to pick up and say we are moving to, but there's also a lot of families who don't.
I wanted to ask about that there's, for all these families that are moving and are making these choices, there are a lot of families that aren't.
Right.
What is this going to mean for those families that, as you talked about, attendance-based funding that a lot of these schools are getting? What does that mean for the families who don't have as much options for mobility?
Right. So they can, remain in their public school district where it's going to have, constrained funding. They're going to, the district is trying to decide how to best to serve the students who remain. And then there's choice. Yeah. So there's the voucher system, which we know that a lot of families have applied for. And then, there's also charter schools, especially in the urban core, where we've seen they've kind of focused their efforts. And And so, yeah, that's the really difficult decision that parents have to make. And I can never fault a parent for the best decision they think they make for their child.
I'm curious about this, that, the conversation around school choice was that this is, when lawmakers were passing school choice, the argument was this is going to benefit those underserved people.
Right.
There's been a lot of speculation that it's not going to serve them as much, that it's going to serve people who are already in private schools. But as we're rolling out this program, and I believe we've reported as soon as in the next couple of weeks, people could start finding out if they're going to get one of these vouchers. As we're doing that, what are you as a researcher going to be watching for in terms of trends of who's getting access to this, what it's going to mean for public school districts? What are you going to be looking out for?
Yeah, just as, I don't know if we'll do a specific study, but just as a researcher, what I'll be looking out for as far as the numbers that are released. Yeah, I'll be looking at, I'll be interested in how many of the students were already attending private schools. I'm really interested in how many new families are opting into that. I'm really interested in the demographics of who gets selected, as far as, is it reaching those most economically disadvantaged families, or is it really those families that may have been on the cusp of like, we want to send our kid, but it's just a little bit, but now that money helps and kind of lessens the blow to us.
Sure.
So I'll be interested in some of those things. We're working on some stuff looking at, we did, it wasn't our center, but one of the other centers did ask some questions about intent to apply on one of the Greater Houston Community Panel. About intent to apply for vouchers, and we're hoping to follow up with did you actually, so kind of getting at some of those things about like where they were going before they decided to do this, and is it mostly kids who are already in private or new? Yeah, so I'll be interested when some of those things come out. We have seen like just the numbers of just obviously demand was very high, and I think most of those spots are going to be filled with the priority groups. I'm interested to see that data for sure.
We are speaking with Courtney Thrash, who's a researcher at Rice University's Houston Education Research Consortium. I have such trouble with the word consortium.
We're commonly referred to as HERC, if that is helpful.
HERC. Okay,
yes.
at HERC. And if you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call, 713-440-8870. I'm curious, going back into the study, because vouchers haven't taken effect yet, and your study looked at without. When parents were moving, when the shift was happening with the students from maybe public schools into other sources of education, what were we seeing was the reasons for those moves?
Yeah, so that's something we're working on. That's the survey we're currently developing to ask parents, like if they have chosen to leave traditional public schools, why? Like what was the driver? So we're hoping to have some stuff from that in the fall, next spring.
What did we see in this survey of percentages of people that were shifting out of public schools? Do we know?
So this wasn't a survey. This was all using like census, live birth data. This was all using publicly available data on just like demographics.
So not knowing the reasoning behind it, just looking at what was
We just wanted to look at like overall population change. And it was really because we kept hearing enrollment's declining because of birth rates, enrollment's declining because of birth rates. And we were like, yeah, but right? Like, is it something else? And so that's why we wanted to look at the whole region, and especially looking at school districts as our unit of analysis, because a lot of stuff comes out about MSAs, metropolitan statistical areas, cities, counties, but there's not a lot of information about school district boundaries. So that's kind of where we wanted to go with it.
So just to be clear, the data that you collected shows that there is a shift away from public schools, correct?
No, not exactly. No, it was more, looking at, we looked at population change. Right. And then we did this kind of alignment thing where we said, if we know how many kids were born in a district, and then we looked at enrollment 5 years later, kind of what's that align? What's that ratio? Right. And so we're seeing that in some districts, they are enrolling way more children than were born in their district. So that to me hints at mobility, right? If you're enrolling 140 kids for every 100 that were born, that means families are moving into your region, right? But if you have 100 kids born and you're enrolling 60, that could be multiple things, right? It's really hard to disentangle what exactly it is. So it could be that they're moving. You have families that are having children and then moving before they start school. Or it could be that they're engaging in choice.
So your study, what did it show as far as, if you can address this, urban center like Houston as compared to surrounding communities? Did we see in the urban centers, what I'm assuming you're going to see is children born but less enrollment, and in the outer communities you're going to see less born? And is that what it proved?
Yeah, there is a general pattern there. So in the urban core, we are seeing kind of that less alignment between births and enrollment. And I think that's one, population change. I think that's mobility, and I think it is choice, because that's where a lot of those places. And we did show that in the report, that districts who are enrolling fewer kindergarten students than expected, more of them have charter schools in their boundaries.
Interesting.
Yeah, not all of them.
So
it's not like a causal.
Yeah,
but
I'm curious to see what the next set of data will be with the next study, because that always is fascinating. But we have a call, 713-440-8870. It is Andrew from the Heights. Andrew, what's on your mind?
Hey, I was listening to you guys, and I was curious. Also, thank you all for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Is there a historical precedent in this kind of data that points at student outcomes, some sort of statistic in these sort of educational transitions? Like, at the end of it all, how do the kids do?
Good point, Andrew. Curious. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So with the data that we were looking at, no, right? That because we were looking at like census data, we were looking at birth data, we were looking at and then we did do enrollment. So I mean, as far as you could look at the effect of, for instance, closures or school consolidations or school openings. You could look at any of that on the effect of students, and there has been quite a bit of work on that. But have we looked at it? No, so I can't speak to what's happening in the Houston region.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, for your call. And Courtney, thank you for the work you've done. I know that this is the first step in more information still to come about, and I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen when vouchers kick in, what that's going to mean for us. And I'm sure you guys will be following it too.
Yes, we are as well, yeah.
Thank you very much. Courtney Thrasher is a researcher at Rice University's Houston Education Research Consortium. Courtney, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, how one local nonprofit wants to change fashion's carbon footprint. So stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
You can listen to Marketplace. It's coming up tonight at 6:30.
Support comes from DePelchin, reminding you that April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. And for more than 130 years, DePelchin has worked to ensure that Houston area children are part of safe and loving families. Learn more at depelchin.org. Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Central Market, offering daily scratch-made pastries, cupcakes, custom cakes, and more, incorporating traditional techniques and innovative recipes. More at centralmarket.com. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Live Nation, presenting David Byrne, Friday, April 24th at Smart Financial Center in Sugar Land. Tickets and more information available at livenation.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse.
And I'm here with our guest host today, Michael Adkison. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Ernie.
Okay, coming up now, we're going to talk about Magpies and Peacocks. Peacocks. What is that? It's a Houston-based nonprofit design house that's dedicated to disrupting the cycle of waste in the fashion industry and its negative impact on the environment. For the past 15 years, they've worked to reclaim waste textiles and turn them into locally made, unique, upcycled collections that make them the only nonprofit design house in the country that's doing this kind of work. To tell us more about Magpies and Peacocks, we're joined by the founder, Sarah-Jayne Smith, and the vice president, Ahshia Berry. Ahshia, Sarah-Jayne, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Okay, I did a series for a while called Mockingbird and Armadillo, and everybody said to me, where did that name come from? One of our producers came up with it because it was the state bird and the state creature. I don't remember. How do you get Magpies and Peacocks?
I feel like this should be a secret at this point.
Don't tell anyone.
Okay, well, the clue is the fact that I'm British, and in folklore, a magpie is a bird that collects shiny objects. So in folklore, it's one of those, it sees beauty in everything, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a diamond or a piece of tin foil, or they line their nests with pretty things. So that was our magpie. Didn't realize they weren't indigenous to the US. So that's been an explanation for 15 full years. The peacock, so much easier to imagine why. It's really showy. It's very beautiful. The magpie is just a black and white crow, effectively. So it shows both kind of parts of who we are and how our process works.
Yeah. See, it makes so much more sense now.
We're definitely magpies when we're in collection mode and when we upcycle. Also, the PR girls in us were like, no one will have this name.
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah. Try and find something that hasn't already been picked.
Except for our friends in Bel Air, who we've known for a while, Magpies Gifts, who we love.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody's like, I met the Magpies in Bel Air. We're like, nope.
That's different.
We're magpies and then some. Yes.
And then
some. Okay, we've got the name down. Now the mission. Talk to me about the idea of where you saw the need to say, wait a minute, the fashion industry is rather wasteful, and what we can do to fix that.
I have an interiors background, so I was in quite a privileged position to see how people live. And again, being British, we don't really have anything like the amount of space you have here. So I was very used to recycling. That had been my upbringing, to make and mend, very British thing. But I get to Texas and, that is not how things operate here.
We live large
you
and
live
collect a lot of stuff.
And mainly because you have the space to do so. It isn't because anybody has the wrong ethical standpoint. It's more like you just don't need to. So when creating sanctuary spaces, to me, it was like, well, how can you keep your mind organized when your life is chaos? So it seemed very obvious to me that people would do better with the stuff they had. They would honor it better if they just had something else they could do. So I took 50 clients that I'd worked on designing houses on, and Ahshia and I, by that point, had already hooked up because her prowess in PR and marketing. So at that point, it was like, okay, let's just see what happens if we shake the tree, what falls out. So those 50 people brought everything from their closets, ex-husband stuff, jewelry, whatever it was.
That's what we have lots of in Texas,
all my
ex-husbands and
exes
ex-wives.
live in
Texas. Absolutely. It was already a hotbed, right? So it was getting them all in a room and then figuring out what would we get and what would we be able to do with it. Over the last 15 years, that's snowballed. Now it's not just people's closets. We're working with corporations and partners in, NRG, the George R. Brown, Southwest Airlines, ExxonMobil, all who now have sustainability, at least some kind of platform in sustainability that we can help them with.
Sarah-Jayne just said you shook the tree and saw what came out. What came out, Ahshia?
Everything. Currently, we'll be getting all the scrim material from both Houston and Dallas fan fests. We have, if we could sew it, we'll take it. Fire-resistant cotton twill, right? ExxonMobil,
denim.
Chevron, denim.
Retired
everything came
aircraft
out
seating.
the tree.
Because
I have two retired airline seats in my office. Don't touch them.
We get them on my handbag on the way out.
A plane's worth of Southwest Airlines each year, and we still get a vintage Louis Vuitton. a vintage
Pretty much
Chanel.
anything that is any textile based.
Any textile.
And then what do you do with them for folks that aren't following where we know where it goes, but let's.
So we mainly do clothing, affordable mid-luxury clothing. And the whole point is there was a while where people thought upcycle was just crafty. This dress I have on was literally an end of boat of fabric. So we're like, nope, we're going to upcycle it for you, rework it, up the value. You'll be able to use or wear this piece for another 10 or 20 years.
So do I bring my old stuff to you and you help me have a new life with these old clothes?
Yes. Some people buy them back. Some people just clearing out. And for us, it's like we look at what we've got and how much we have of it and what the highest and best use of that would be. That's the up part of the cycling. Upcycling is raising the value of it. We have down market versions here in Houston where clothing can be rags. Most of it's baled and sold back to developing countries, but there are down cycle versions. Upcycling is raising that value. It is good quality fabrics that are just going to waste. But sometimes they are not fashion. Like we talked about banners, and Ahshia mentioned scrim material. All of that stuff is not traditionally fashion. Mm-hmm. So we've put a spin on that. Now it's merchandising. Now sports teams can do something with old merch. Now our conference centres can reuse old banners. Now we can actually create pathways to new training or economic opportunity or remanufacturing effectively by keeping that stuff out of landfill. It's $100 billion a year in the US alone.
That's what I was going
to
talk about is how much, when it comes to the waste of it all, now there's this whole concept of fast fashion where so much is being produced that is not going to have long-term use to it. And I'm curious the impact that's having on our world.
Yeah. I mean, we're a small nonprofit, and we've diverted 375 tons. So you can imagine, just us. And it's not the quality where you want to keep it. Even if you want to keep it, it's just not that kind of quality. They have trained us, all of us as consumers, you got to get new. And that's not the situation. My parents were boomers in the 50s. They sold. Some of their stuff is still in existence, and it's beautiful because there was a time where we had great textiles. We had the craft of making and all. Now you buy the T-shirt or you buy the jeans. You want to keep your jeans for 2 years, but what's the reality,
Well, the truth is, if you're buying something for less than the price of a latte, someone else is paying, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we pay our garment workers $3 a day in terrible conditions is just hiding in plain sight. It's quite obvious by the level of production and the price of it that this is very, very low quality.
Yeah, and not we as a Magpies, but that's a international statistic. And they're literally pumping out millions of things. You think about all of the big festivals, all of the big sporting events. That's all going to hit landfill. I remember we got scrim material from the Super Bowl when it was here.
We've got 8 miles of that.
8 miles. We're just at the end of that.
Wow.
We used it all up, but
yeah.
that would, if it hadn't been reclaimed by us and a couple of other nonprofits,
it would have just.
NFL was great about it.
Yeah.
They organized
At that
it.
time, we were the highest reclamation in the history of the Super Bowl. At Houston.
Wow.
And it was for us that why is our city not so proud of that? Why is that not? That's killer to be able to say that we had the highest reclamation. It's because we're the only city who had textiles.
But it's catching on because we also got
they raised
email.
the bar. They raised the bar to push cities to be more sustainable. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? If we can just move the needle on that, then every sports arena or every theatre or can all take responsibility for their own footprints.
Hence World Cup. And then we got an email from the PGA because now people are starting to realize people wanted to do right. They just didn't have the education.
They didn't have any place also to put it.
Right.
You guys didn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we got a comment on our YouTube. They said, could the guests direct us toward brands that have longevity of wear? My old Brooks Brothers clothes outwear my new Brooks Brothers clothes. The brand changed. Where do we go now?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. you and I are not consumers of any other brand other than our own. So we're probably the worst people to ask shopping-wise.
This is where you mention your own brand and you say that's
Yeah,
the
Magpies
one.
and Peacocks, come and see us. That's
Come and
number
see
one.
us.
But there are brands out there. The only thing I would say that you have to be very cautious is that greenwashing is probably more prevalent than you ever imagine, because once it fell out of favor to have high bulk, cheap production, and people started holding brands accountable for either ethical behavior or, not having a transparent system, once they realized that this was looking bad, marketing basically took over, and probably what they have fallen prey to is trying to look like they're improving their brand, but actually they're not. So maybe they're cutting corners and taking credit for things, perhaps. And so I would say be very careful. Hold those brands accountable. Look them up.
Will you both come back? We are out of time,
Yes,
but I would
we-
love
Yes.
to chat more
We
about
will.
all of this. For folks to find out more about your brand, where do they look?
www.magpiesandpeacocks.org, and we have been in the East End proudly for over 10 years. We're right there on McKinney.
Wow.
Sarah-Jayne Smith and Ahshia Berry, thank you both for coming in today.
Thank
talking
you.
with
Always
us.
a pleasure.
And unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the show today. Michael Adkison, a joy sitting across from
Thank
you today.
you.
Or
It was-
next to you.
It was a chore to be with you.
I'm sure it is. We want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations, including a look at a great nonprofit in our area called the Great Age Movement. We'll tell you more about that tomorrow. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Rice University. Founded in 1912, Rice is a private research university with programs in business, the sciences, and more. Students conduct research in fields